Good morning. Thank you for observing this service. I'm going to lose my mask. In this area of our campus today, there's just Ellen Goto and I, and we're both multiply vaccinated. And so for the purposes of your being able to hear me, I'll lose the mask. But I want you to remember, take these with you when you go out. I am so often in a retail store or in a restaurant the only guy wearing masks, and I just don't see any reason not to take a little extra precaution when we go out. But I'll lose it to be with you. I'm going to, as usual, begin our service with the striking of the calling bell, the Kansho bell, and I will be right back after having done that. We rely upon the source of limitless wisdom and endless life. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Nabutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Ndabutsu, Namo Nabutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Ndabutsu, Namo Nabutsu, Namo Itabutsu, Namo Ndabutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Ndabutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Ndabutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Ndabutsu. I will then again ask you to join me in the chanting of the Juseige. Now this service is being recorded for broadcast at a later time, perhaps on Mother's Day, this coming May 8th. But we're recording this so that we have it for a time when we can't live stream. We can't always live stream. And I will ask you, if you are at home watching this, you should see Juseige on the screen. I know some of you have the service book at home, and if you're using the old OCBC service book we use, it's page 39. If you would, join me in the chanting of the Juseige. Busetsu Daimuryo Jukyo Juseige Gagonto Segan Hishimu Jodo Shigan Hu Mandoku Te Fujo Shogak Gao Muryoko Huindai Seishu Hutai Sho Bingu Te Fujo Thyogaku Gashijo Butndo Myosyo Cho Jippo Kukyo Mi Shomon Te Fujo Shogaku Ryokujin Shonen Ryoeshu Bongyo Shigumu Jodo Isho Tenninshi Jinriki Daiko Hushomu Taido Shoujo-san Kumyo Kotaishu Yakunan Kaiichi Eigen Meshi kon muon hei toku sho akudo tsudatten shumon koto jo mondoku ioro jippo nichigatten shujuki tenkon pugen ishu kai hodo koseku dokuho jodai shuchu sappo shishiku kuyo ithaya button gu sokushu tokuhon ganne yoman tokui sangayo nyobutun mugechi tudatten mi husho gangaku eriki toshi sai shoson shianya koka daisen no kando koku sho tenin Touchin myoke Namandabu, 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 namandabu. Gani shikudoku, byodo sei ithai, Don modai shinna ojo la koku. Namanda buramanda namanda 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 buramanda namo amida butsu namo amida butsu namanda butsu. Thank you for joining me in the chanting of Juseige, the most oft chanted of the verse passages from the larger sutra on Amida Buddha. We are now going to have a devotional reading after our song and the preceding our song, So we will next have a devotional reading, and the devotional reading will be the Golden Chain. And the Golden Chain will be on page 8 if you're actually using the OCBC book. And Alan Goto will get it up on the screen for those of you who don't have the book. Again, page 8 of this book and this piece, Golden Chain, the Golden Chain. I am a link in Amida's golden chain of love that stretches around the world. I will keep my link bright and strong. May I be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. May I think pure and beautiful thoughts, say pure and beautiful words, and do pure and beautiful deeds. May every link in Amida's golden chain of love be bright and strong, and may we all attain perfect peace. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So we will then move on to the GATHA today, and our song, our devotional song, will be Hotoke Sama. And that is, again, those who are utilizing the book, it's page 116. And I'll ask you to do the first 2 verses with me, not all 3, first 2 verses, and I'm going to start on a count of 3. I'm not sure what's going to happen to you there at home. 1 and 2 and a No, 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 sama, Hotoke Sama, watashi no suki na ka sama no, omune no yo ni yanwari to, dakarete mitai Hotoke Sama. No, 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 sama, Hotoke Sama, watashi no suki na to sama no, otete no yo ni shikari to, sugate mitai Hotoke Sama. Namo Amida Butsu, 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 Namo Amida Butsu. Well, thank you so much again for observing this service and participating with us. And I'm going to go ahead, if I may, deliver a Dharma message. Now, in this new world here now, we're all getting ready for Mother's Day, and I hope you are. I hope you did, but we may or may not broadcast this on Mother's Day. We probably will. But if we missed it and Mother's Day already happened, I hope you were good to your mother. And if your mom's already gone, I hope you spent some time thinking about her. But again, we appreciate your observing and participating in this service through the internet. And Alan Goto is helping me to record the service. He's been just irreplaceable these last 3 years. My wife did Gregory Gibbs did the flowers for us. They're simpler because we're not in the temple building, but she got these flowers from Jose Salcido from his Ikebana class, his flower arrangement class, and we appreciate that. And I appreciate my wife doing that work. Again, we may well be broadcasting this on Mother's Day of 2022, which is the 8th. Something could happen such that you're looking at this at another time. Maybe you're tuning into YouTube after the fact. My mom's been gone for 30 years, and I don't just think of her every day, I speak to her every day. She doesn't answer back yet, but I do. Not knowing when you will listen to this means that I must talk about things that are always true and important. Now, we have some teachings that all Buddhists share. For example, impermanence, interdependence. But you know, how we understand those teachings is quite various. For some schools of Buddhism, interdependence is an explanation of the way in which karmic chains bind us. And not much more than that, nothing else. The Sarvastivada school seems to have explained interdependence that way, as just a description of the karmic chains binding us. For them, interdependence is not an especially good thing, it's just a fact. For us, for the schools of the mature Mahayana, in Mahayana Buddhism, interdependence is a wonderful fact about life. Interdependence for us means that one thing flows into another and they cannot be separated. It's one life. Traveling on the larger vehicle, we discover that interdependence means that you participate in my life and I participate in your life. We do not obstruct one another. That's part of the meaning. We're not really obstructive of one another. Our lives flow in and out of each other. This is a good thing, a very good thing for us, riding the larger vehicle. Even the teaching of impermanence, which seems awfully straightforward, even impermanence can be understood variously. In Sarvastivada, things are permanent, as a matter of fact, but human experience is not. So for the Sarvastivada actually taught, I don't know if there's still a group anywhere that exists. They were once perhaps the biggest school of Buddhism, but they taught when they were big that the future already exists and the past still exists. These are Buddhists. How can that be? Because my experience is still impermanent. I can't go to the past even though they say it's there. I can't go to the future even though they say it's still there. So they're still in the family. They still get to be in the Buddhist family, even though that's an unusual take on impermanence. Even impermanence, which seems so straightforward, can be seen a bunch of different ways. In the Abhidharma texts of the Theravadan school, impermanence means that everything appears and disappears and reappears every 84,000th of a second. That's what these philosophers of the Abhidharma came to say in the Theravada. And I was in a class in our graduate school, Institute of Buddhist Studies, about 35 years ago, and one of my fellow students was talking with one of the teachers, Dr. Richard Payne, and she said, yeah, what the Buddha taught, that this table goes in and out of existence every 84,000th of a second. And Richard Payne looked at the table and looked at her and looked back at the table and said, what the Buddha meant by impermanence is that if you come back into this room 100 years from now, this table won't be here. That's the truth, But that interpretation makes sense to me. It comes in and goes out of existence every 84,000th of a second. We're talking about some quantum level that we'll never see with our bare eyes. We may never see it in any way. Maybe, but the point is, it seems such a straightforward idea, impermanence. But for one group, it means everything actually is everything is permanent except us. And for another group, it means everything lasts just an 84,000th of a second. But for Richard Payne and I, it means if you come back in this room in 100 years, you won't find this table. Things aren't that steady. Even that most straightforward and seemingly simple idea is open to various interpretations. And 2,500 years ago, impermanence was taught at the same time in Greece that the Buddha taught it in India. It was taught by Heraclitus, that everything is impermanent. But about 50 years later, about 2,450 years ago, someone asked one of Heraclitus' students, said, so that principle that everything is constantly changing, does that change? That's a paradox if you're a philosopher. If you're talking about metaphysics, the Heraclitean philosophy of impermanence has to address that question. It's a good question to them and a difficult question for them. I don't think there was one answer given. There were various answers the Heracliteans gave. Because Heraclitus was doing what Aristotle later what the students of Aristotle later came to call metaphysics. He was doing metaphysics. Heraclitus was trying to describe the world the way it is. But the Buddha was trying to describe our experience of the world and how it is. So that's a little different. Heraclitus was describing the actual world with his principle of constant change, and it is paradoxical if we say that the world is always impermanent, because that principle seems to be permanent. That's permanent. You can take that to the bank, so to speak. That was their view, and it was confusing. But Shakyamuni Buddha, at the same time in India, teaching that everything is impermanent, he was not doing metaphysics. Rather famously, we say the Buddha was not a metaphysician. He wasn't trying to describe the world. He was trying to help us understand our experience of our lives and here in this world. The teachings of the Buddha are all about the human experience of life. Does that ever change, that it's impermanent? Does the human experience of life as impermanent ever change? No. This is how it is for us. Nothing lasts as it is for us. Even the Sarvastivadin Buddhists, even the Sarvastivadin Buddhists agree with us about that. Although they teach that the past is still extant and the future is already here. Words can mean a lot of things. These days, most people that use the phrase pro-life, that means anti-abortion. For better or worse, that's what they really mean. It's not combined, this idea of pro-life, it's not combined with a package of social programs to nurture the child, to feed the child and educate it. They're just pro-birth, as some people put it. It's a pro-birth position. Pro-life means different things to different people. Some Americans react to the so-called pro-life movement by saying that no one else should ever have anything to say about a woman's reproductive life. Do they really mean that in the absolute way that they state it? You may remember that horrible case about 30 years ago where some very wealthy young woman on a cross-country flight gave birth to she barricaded herself in the toilet of the airplane, gave birth, and then strangled the baby and flushed it down the toilet. Was that no one else's business? And there are countries where marriageable males vastly outnumber marriageable females. How did that happen? Infanticide. That happened in places, I won't mention which countries, a couple of them. That happened because people have the baby. Oh, it's a new baby. Oh, it's a girl. Well, and then they just let it die because they wanted a boy. That's discrimination. That's what the Buddha doesn't do. And here I'm just reminding us that the words mean a lot of different things, Pro-life, who's responsible, all these things can mean a lot of things. And I think that this kind of thing is somebody else's business in some cases. But my point is that philosophical and religious ideas can be interpreted in most cases, in many ways. With Buddhist tradition, there are several different perspectives on what impermanence means. In our tradition, there are several very different meanings about impermanence, several, right? As we saw, the Sarvastivadins very different from us. So Sarvastivadins believe the past is still there, the future is still there, I'm just stuck moving like this. I really don't believe that. I don't believe the future's already here. I don't know about the past still being here. I wish that were true maybe, but I don't know. But the future's not already here. I disagree with them about that. So even that simple idea of impermanence can be interpreted in many ways, several different ways. Within Buddhist tradition, there are several dozen very different interpretations of what interdependence means. As I mentioned earlier, for the Sarvastivadins, it's just a description of the way cause and effect works to bind us. For Mahayana Buddhism, in the mature schools of Mahayana, for Zen and Nichiren and Jodo Shinshu and Jodo Shu, for the mature schools of Mahayana, interdependence means my life is your life is my life. One thing flows into another. We can't separate them. We must take care of everyone because everyone is part of the same life. This is what we mean. This is what we interpret it as being. However, Buddhists are capable of being consistent, and within each school of Buddhism there is an effort to be consistent, and in the Tanisho, a record of Shinran Shonin's oral teachings, in Chapter 1, it contains both statements open to multiple interpretations, and one statement I'm going to close on that only has one interpretation. So please allow me to read that passage, the first article in the record of Shinran's oral teachings, the Tanisho. Chapter 1. The moment you entrust yourself with the thought that, saved by the inconceivable working of Amida's vow, you will realize birth, and the mind set on saying the Nembutsu arises within you immediately. Amida causes you to receive the benefit of being grasped, never to be abandoned. The primal vow of Amida makes no distinction between people young and old, good and evil. Only Shinjin is essential. Only entrusting matters. This you should know. The reason for this is that the vow, the promise, was made for the sake of saving sentient beings of deep and immense evil karma. The vow was made for the sake of saving sentient beings of blind passions that rage furiously. Thus, in entrusting oneself to the primal vow of Amida Buddha, other good acts are not essential, for there is no good act that can be better than the Nembutsu. And one should not fear evil, for there is no evil act so great that it obstructs Amida Buddha's primal vow. Thus were his words. So again, Article 1 of the Tanisho. Now there's a classic ambiguity here, and that's not always a bad thing, but and there's also a key point of univocal teaching, a point where this passage gratefully has only one possible interpretation. So the point of ambiguity here is in the first two words, okoru toki, first two words of the passage, and it's translated here as the moment you entrust yourself. But okoru toki also rather naturally translates as the time at which, when I was 17, Frank Sinatra song, it could mean something like that. It doesn't necessarily mean that exact instant, but that's how it's consistently translated. The English translators consistently translate it as the moment, the exact moment, whereas that could be what it means, or it could mean in the time at which, at the time at which. So there is an ambiguity here. There is more than one possible meaning. I'm one of those who would prefer to translate the opening okoru toki as at the time when. More open textured in my preference. Because we're talking about the duration in which shinjin, trusting confidence, is received. Now, the absolutely unambiguous statement that we will close on is the primal vow of Amida makes no distinction between people old and young, good and evil. That's the point I want to close on. And the Japanese term is erabarezu, does not select, does not distinguish. The compassion of Amida, the transformative vow power of Amida Buddha, makes no distinction between people who are good or evil. This is what is meant. Whether we say the Buddha doesn't distinguish, or the Buddha doesn't select, or the Buddha doesn't favor, or the Buddha doesn't discriminate, it all means the same thing. It means good person, bad person, you're welcome. You're welcome here. Words may vary, but there's only one meaning possible here. Everyone is welcome. Even me. Even you. I've been speaking with you about how what looks like the same idea can really mean very different things to different groups or persons, or groups of persons. Impermanence and interdependence, two of our basic teachings, are examples. Impermanence can mean every 84,000th of a second the world breaks apart and reforms. Impermanence can just mean the rather logical thing that Richard Payne had to say, if you come back 100 years, you're not going to find this table here. However, the truly foundational principles for each of the schools of Buddhism are clear, and we speak them in one voice. The Buddha does not discriminate even against the hate-filled and the destructive. Everyone is welcome to enter the light. Everyone is welcome in the realm of goodness and beauty. Everyone is welcome in Amida Buddha's pure and happy realm. All of our narratives have good conclusions. All of our stories have happy endings. If your life has 70 chapters in it, I don't know how many chapters your life has. If your life has 70 chapters, I promise you that as a sayer of the Nembutsu, you will like chapter 70. I can't make any promises about chapter 67. But the last chapter has a very happy ending. You enter a realm of joy and connection. Don't worry about whether you deserve it or not. I don't deserve it, but I'm going one day. Because the Buddha does not discriminate against guys like me, against guys like anyone, against anyone. The Buddha does not discriminate. Everyone is welcome into the light. I hope you will take that to heart if you have not already. In closing, please allow me to ask you to join me in Gassho in a posture of respect and in saying the Buddha's name a few times. We rely upon the source of limitless wisdom and endless life. Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda Butsu. Thank you.